Hello and welcome back to the Atmosphere is Electric. There's Fran. I'm Rich. How are you, bud?
Yeah, I'm all right. You?
Yeah, looks like you've got some more kits on the background. Have you added more kit, or are they always up there? Have I just not noticed them?
No, they've always been there.
Oh, okay. There you go. I should probably pay more attention to the backdrop. So tell me you don't pay attention. Tell me you don't pay attention. Look, before we get into how do we get on with our predictions last time round? I feel like you probably did a bit better than me, which is not surprising. But how did you get on? You think you did all right, didn't you?
We didn't do too badly, to be fair. I'm just having a quick check now. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6 right with 2 correct scores, and you got 4
Oh,
with 1 correct score. So it's not the end of the world. The correct scores obviously boost it up if you'd had a couple of them.
Useless. Must try harder. It was a difficult game. It was. I think there was a couple of obviously the draw. Wolves getting a draw. Obviously, Southampton going ahead against Liverpool. Nottingham Forest beating Manchester City. Man U drawing. So there was a couple of sort of skew-with results in there, wasn't it? But overall, actually. Quite a decent game week, and as we spoke about sort of yesterday when we were talking about something completely different, again highlighting never back the early game with Nottingham Forest beating Man City 1-0.
Yep, and also, like you just mentioned, Southampton's going first on your freeze. That was, I think it was 20-1. So if you play in that game, it's always worth having a couple of quid on it.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into this week's fixtures, which is a funny week, obviously, with there being a Carabao Cup final, so a couple of teams haven't got a game in the league as such. Let's just touch on the Champions League, which obviously come to a conclusion last night. Firstly, how are you feeling about the format now? It's changed now that we're into the knockout stage. Obviously, Arne Slot kicking off that they finished first, had to play PSG, whereas Aston Villa finished, I think it was 8th, and got to play Bruges. How are you feeling about the knockout stage of the Champions League?
I'm still of the opinion that it wasn't broken and they didn't need to fix it. It now feels like the Champions League's back because it's the format that we used to have. But I mean, I sort of agree with Slot. I mean, it is just not look of the draw, it's look of the league of where you finish, isn't it? So it's not like it's been fixed, but they shouldn't have been allowed to have teams that finish that far down the league qualifying. Like Real Madrid, they should have been knocked out. They were poor in the group stages. Like you shouldn't be allowed to qualify and then end up getting to a quarter semi-final. So I sort of agree with him, but also I don't agree with him on the sense of, we've drew this team because, I mean, that's just the league format. But for me, it wasn't broken. It didn't need fixing. Revert back to the old format.
Well, the interesting thing is thinking about exactly that journey of Liverpool got to play PSG, they finished top. Aston Villa got to play Club Brugge. Club Brugge knocked out Atalanta. Atalanta smashed Juventus at the weekend 4-0. Atalanta are a very, very good team. I still can't quite get me around how Club Brugge did that, but they did. So actually, Aston Villa could have had a very, very different journey to where they are if the results beforehand had gone. And knockout football is knockout football. But I agree with you. But I think Real Madrid played the game of we just need to qualify. We just need to finish 23rd or higher, and we'll start to beat teams in the knockout phase, and therefore they sort of cut their cloth accordingly, which makes it maybe a bit of a mockery of the league stages, really.
Do you not just feel that it's another competition that they've tampered with to allow the big clubs the ability to rotate their players? I just think it's another change that's been made that doesn't help. I mean, I know the Champions League's different because it's sort of the bigger teams are all in it, but the smaller teams in it that qualify Champions League, you have to play your best side every single time. So I think it's just another change that's been made to suit the elite.
And off the back of that, obviously, Liverpool got knocked out by PSG. You got on them after the first leg to win the whole thing. I can't think of a more impressive team that I've seen this season than PSG. They looked absolutely fantastic over both legs, didn't they?
I agree. As soon as I saw the performance that they put against Liverpool in the first leg, I thought, I can't see how Liverpool beat them. They were 16-1. I thought that's unbelievable odds for a team that, like you've just said, I think are the best team in it. Unfortunately, I think they have to go down a harder route than what someone like Barcelona looked like. But for me, I can't see them. I mean, they've got Villa next, haven't they? I can't see how they don't beat Villa. I think they'll actually tank them. And I can't see how it'll be Real Madrid, I think, in the next round. I can't see how they don't beat Real Madrid.
Or Arsenal.
Yeah, with the players in midfield that they've got especially, I can see them just dominating the ball. I mean, some of the players that they have, probably, when I say lesser known players, it's not like they come from nowhere, but players like Vitinha, João Neves, they're not sort of household names yet, but they looked unbelievable in the middle of the park. Like just the way they controlled the game against a fantastic Liverpool team, I thought they were unbelievable.
And final one, I don't know if you saw it live, but obviously the Madrid derby last night ended in controversy. For me, I thought that was one of the most disgusting uses of VAR I've ever come across in my life. The Alvarez penalty. I know if you super zoom in, he did technically, when he fell, touch the ball with his left foot. But for me, for the love of God, what are we doing?
Well, I thought VAR was brought in to eradicate mistakes. Was the goal given on the kick? I must admit, I fell asleep after the final whistle, so I didn't see the pens. But I've seen the replay. But did the referee give the goal?
Yes.
So it's not a mistake. It's not been given as a foul. That VAR shouldn't have any right to intervene.
Well, technically, I suppose they're saying it was a mistake because he gave the goal and the players run back. The crowd's gone wild. There was then this really awkward kind of silence where he's kind of doing the thing where they hold the ear to let you know, and then he's went, and that was it. That was literally the no goal double tap. But I don't know. I just think, in that moment, in that pressure, under that situation, it just killed them. Like, you could just see from that moment, like, Atletico Madrid didn't really know what was going on. It was just balloon popped. It was a horrific moment. I just think, I don't
What
know.
happened? What happened? Did they have to retake it?
No, that was it done. He just.
It was classed as oh dear.
He's gone around the pitch celebrating that he scored the goal. Gone back to his teammates thinking he scored the goal. Just before the next player's about to put the ball down, the Real Madrid player take the penalty. The referee's giving it one of them, no goal, and that was it. That was the, and so now all of a sudden you've gone away thinking it's 2-2 or 2-2. Now it's 2-1, and now it's 1-1. It's just, I don't know, man. It just didn't feel right to me, and you had to really super zoom in. I went to bed thinking it was a misjustice. I have now seen a video where you can see that he's left.
I've seen 3 or 4 replays from different angles, and you can see you can sort of see it, but then you don't know whether he's already kicked the ball.
It's just,
if that makes I don't think there was conclusive evidence there to actually reverse the decision, so from the replays that I've seen. But there's just no need to get involved with that. Like, penalty shootouts are penalty shootouts. They're a lottery as there is. They don't need people getting interfering with the game.
I'll move on. But what I haven't seen in a long while is a penalty retaken from the goalkeeper being off the line too early. That sort of slipped, that one. That's kind of been forgotten about in terms of a rule. If you remember a couple of years ago, it was they were quite harsh on that, weren't they? But actually now that feels like it's become almost like the goalkeeper, holding the ball for 6 seconds has become a thing of the past.
I think a lot of that, because I've seen a fair few penalties where it's been questioned, but when you look at the replay, what the goalies do now is they stand a yard behind the line, don't they? Then move forward. So I think they've had to change their tactics to ensure that they don't get pulled up on it.
But my point is that like I say, I just thought it was a really, really in that pressurised situation and that game that as big as it is, I just didn't like it. I don't think that's what VAR was brought in for, and I think we should bin it off.
It's not what VAR was brought in for, and that's the point around VAR. Is it's ruining the emotions of the game, your enjoyment of the game, and like you've just said there, I'd get rid of it in a heartbeat if I had the choice.
Okay, let's move on. We have a very interesting game week ahead of us, and it starts at Goodison Park on Saturday. No early game this week. 3 p.m. kickoff. Everton host West Ham in the David Moyes derby. Never said that before, I don't think. Could be a really, really interesting game, couldn't it? I thought West Ham, for all of their sort of huff and puff, didn't really look like scoring, particularly against Newcastle on Monday. And this could be another game where unless West Ham find a different way of playing, I think they could go sort of to nil on this one for me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of West Ham's star players, if you like, I mean, they're heavily reliant on Jarrod Bowen, aren't they? But their star players, like Kudus, his form has absolutely dropped, hasn't it? Like, he looks very, very average at the minute. Paquetá, I mean, he's not even playing, is he? But all of their star players that were heavily relied upon from last season, have just nosedived their form. So, yeah, it's very difficult to see how they do score, to be honest. Everton have had that increased level of form, haven't they? But they've just dropped off the past couple of weeks as well. It's probably because they know they're safe and the league is done and dusted. But yeah, West Ham do look very much in a transition to a Potter team, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, this is the epitome, and we touched on this yesterday. When you're looking at kind of predictions and accumulators and bets and whatever else, this is one of those games that you almost don't touch because neither team is playing for anything. They're both 10 points clear of Wolves, 16 points clear of Ipswich. Their run of form is, like you say, a little bit. If you take the Arsenal victory out of West Ham, that'd be 1 win in 5. Like they haven't really had that manager bounce. They've not really kicked on. Whereas Everton have drawn 4 of their last 5. So this might not be a surprise when I tell you that I think this could end up being under 2.5 goals in a draw.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're probably going to plump for one team, you'd probably say Everton based on,
Yes.
they have scored goals. But no, I'd agree. I wouldn't be putting. Well, I've not put any of them in my £5 challenge, and I can't see how you can, positively back either of them with any confidence.
But so with one eye on next season, because obviously that's where both of these teams are now focused. Do you think it's fair to say that for the first time in a long while, Everton are actually setting themselves up for next season to be actually miles ahead of where West Ham are, and actually in a much stronger position for next season's, whatever it looks like in terms of kicking on for Europe or wherever else they think they can go with it?
I would agree with that comment. I'd say that Everton going into the new stadium with a new manager, new owners, I'd imagine that they've got a bit more financial clout behind them due to all of those factors. I'd say they're in a better position at the minute than West Ham and Graham Potter are. West Ham still are going to have a clear out of players because they've got players suited from the last managerial regime. I know there's talk that they want to make the Evan Ferguson transfer permanent, but they're talking 50, 60 million, I think, which is just going to be, well, it might be in their range, but it means that they're not going to be able to sign anyone else. So for me, West Ham are still without a striker, and that needs to be addressed before anything, and that's going to cost them big bucks. So looking at both squads at the minute, I mean, if they stay the same, because I think Branthwaite is probably going to get pinched by someone, but if they stay the same, I would say Everton probably have a better squad that suits the manager and the style than West Ham do with Graham Potter.
And that's a really interesting point when you look at kind of how people can kind of barter their way out of a situation, is that to have a crown jewel that you can sell is always useful, isn't it? And obviously Jared Bowen will be West Ham's, but he feels a little bit more married to the club. I mean, quite literally in terms of who he's married to or getting married to the club. But Branthwaite, I think, like you say, all of the big clubs around Europe would happily have him, and they could easily sort of command £75-80 million for him.
I didn't realise how big he is. I saw him. I don't know what game I saw, but I didn't realise how big he is. Like he's huge, yeah, and he's obviously left-footed, which goes a long way for defenders, because there's not many central left-footed defenders around. It doesn't have to give you balance in the teams. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely the one. If you can keep hold of him or sell him for a ridiculous amount, which is possible, you've got a rebuild or a great player on your hands.
Yeah, because I do feel like there are some good options out there for them in terms of replacement if they get the right amount of money for him. But like I say, I don't see who West Ham can sell that's going to generate that same level of income. And West Ham went quite big last summer, so actually they've got to be careful with their kind of PSR kind of. So I do worry a little bit for where West Ham might see themselves next season.
Well, that's it. When they're talking about Evan Ferguson, I'm thinking, where are you going to be able to get those levels of funds from? You spent over 100 million last summer. You've got a new manager with a different style of play, so you're going to have to be able to sell those players that you bought for at least the same amount, which I don't think is going to happen for any of them. I can't think of one, with the exception of Wan-Bissaka, who you could possibly make a profit on. I don't think anyone has come in who's impressed and would be able to sell for the amount that they bought them for. So I think they're in a bit of trouble, to be honest, because I just don't see who's going to be buying their players, because they're going to be on decent wedge as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to be keep talking about this interesting summer, but actually, for both of those teams, that they need to kick on, and like you say, with the moves that Everton have made with their backroom staff, the changes at board level, new stadium, which of course, let's not forget, sometimes a new stadium actually moves performance backwards. Lots of teams have moved into a new stadium underperformed. I go all the way back to Southampton as being one of the first sort of key teams that ended up sort of missing that local feel of the Dell and that kind of closeness and that capacity into these kind of big empty bowls that we've all got now. So actually, there is some pressure on Everton next season.
No, there is. Yeah, I mean, the only thing you can say is as a club, they do just generally, they're looking up, aren't they? New manager, new ground, new ownership. So I think that'll all play into it, and I think they'll probably transition better than other clubs have, because it's possibly the most positive time that they've had in a decade.
I know we people probably that have listened to us before probably feel that we've both got a bit of a soft spot for Everton, and I probably do. I think their fans deserve it. Like, you know, if you think about a group of fans that are kind of battle hardened and beaten up, and you know, not had anything to cheer for a very long time, Everton fans are right at the top of that list, aren't they?
They are. I also think they're very fortunate as well to be in this position, because it could have been in the past 5 years. They could quite easily have been relegated. They seem to have missed it by the skin of their teeth on 3 occasions. So I think they also have to, you know, they have been treated to some horrendous football or style of play and ownership and all that. So they do deserve, you know, a positive outlook on things. But they have to also realise they've been very, very fortunate to be where they are.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It kind of works both ways, as you quite rightly say. But it leads us on to two teams that actually both have some crown jewels. In fact, lots of crown jewels. Ipswich host Nottingham Forest. This feels like a game that if we'd have said this, you know, in August, this would have been a 6-pointer at the bottom of the table. You know, it could influence relegation for either team. But Nottingham Forest, having just come off the back of that 1-0 victory at home to Manchester City, are right bang in it. And I now can't see actually them not making top four. I think that I'm now going to go all in and say that they make the top four.
Well, it's just been confirmed it's 5, hasn't it? Because who went out? Lille went out, which means they miss out on the place. I think it has just been confirmed that it's 5. So, yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. Now it is 5. I can't see who's going to catch them, because I think the injuries to Newcastle are going to really harm them. The only one that are coming are Brighton, but the others around them are just faltering as well, aren't they? So, no, I think Forest are nailed on now.
I mean, was Saturday's victory an indictment of how good Nottingham Forest are or how bad Manchester City are now, do you think?
Both. I think it showed completely how tactically and well drilled Nottingham Forest are. If you'd have said before the game, how's this game going to go, you would have known that Forest are going to sit in, try and absorb as much pressure and try and hit them on the break. Like, you could have literally said it, but you still have to go and do it against the Man City side that have been rejuvenated through the January signings. I thought they'd probably just have a little bit too much and get through early doors, Man City, but they're so well drilled, Forest. They know exactly what their game plan is. Yes, it's not sexy football, is it? But they know exactly what they're doing with the levels of players they've got, and I think he's done a great job there. I think it does just show that even though you have brought in all of those new players, they still need to bed in. A lot of them are young players with potential. They haven't reached that potential yet. I was a bit baffled by the omission of Marmoush, though. I don't know if you were. I thought that as soon as I saw that, I went, "Oh, that's a bit strange." Just like we said on the previous episode, they were building up a nice partnership, Marmoush and Haaland, and then all of a sudden he was benched.
Yeah, I think they're just experimenting now, aren't they? That they're in a place of just probably not knowing what to do, what their best option
But
is.
now we know that, because I agree. I thought he's just trying a new partnership. But now we know that he's doing that. I think he feels that he's going to have enough to make the top 5. So he is going to experiment a little bit, which to me means I wouldn't be touching them in my accumulators anymore, because you just don't know what team, you want teams that are consistent, and he's constantly rotating them now, trying to get the younger players minutes, trying to build up their confidence, their form, and all those sorts of things. But it's not the level of consistency you want when you're putting in £5 challenges and stuff, is it? So, I mean, I'd be staying clear of them, to be honest.
Yeah, and that feels absolutely bonkers to even think, let alone say out loud, isn't it? It's like it's literally a complete mindset change for all of us that we have to get our heads around, that actually, for the time being, you can't really rely on Manchester City.
No, I mean, are you going to... We'll obviously get on to the game. Would you predict them to beat Brighton? No, I certainly wouldn't. They've been so hit and miss all season. I wouldn't be predicting them to win with confidence anyway. Like, they obviously could go out and win, but I think that's where they are at the minute. And I think it just shows the levels of where City and Forest are, which is such a bizarre thing to say. But Forest know exactly what they're doing, are well drilled, so well drilled. They know defensively, generally, they're very, very sound, and they've got a goal scorer and 2 pacey wingers who hit people on the break. So they know exactly what they're doing. And fair play to what a managerial turnaround that is.
And it's going to enable them to keep hold of their key players, because everybody would have been circling around Morgan Gibbs White as an example, both centre backs, goalkeeper, but actually they're going to be able to, I believe, hold on to them now with a Champions League run next season, and of course then go and do what they tried to do in January with the Cunhas and the bits and pieces. I think that actually, if they get this transfer window right, this could actually really set Nottingham Forest up to become, I don't think they're going to be every season in the Champions League, but you can see them being in the top 8 every year if they get this window right.
If they get the window right, though, they're the sort of historical team that has,
Yeah,
all the history behind them, obviously, that probably have the ability to become one of the elite, if that makes sense. Whereas other teams have come and failed just probably because they don't have that history. Whereas Forest have always been a sleeping giant for 30 years now, haven't they? And they've just been waiting to go back to the top table. So I think if they do get this window right, like I said, it could set them up not for just the future, for the long term future. They could establish themselves as one, a Premier League team for years and years and decades to come, but also eating out of the top table again because everyone knows who Nottingham Forest are, especially in England through their history. And it's been such a long time since they've had anything to shout about.
absolutely. And we talk about crown jewels, and this is where we started. And obviously, Ipswich have done almost the exact opposite of that. I feel they've set themselves up to go down but come back up again next season stronger. They will lose some players over the summer. Obviously, Delap will definitely not be there. I've decided not to try and do the first name anymore. We're just going to go with surname. Let's cut out the middleman. But, he's definitely going somewhere for 50, 60, 70 million quid. There's no doubt about that. In fact, as I keep saying, I know that there's at least 3 of the top 6 desperately trying to get him over the line this summer. And if they reinvest that money correctly, and by the way, they've got already centre forwards for the first division into also a championship. God, how old am I? In terms of Jack Clark, you've got Sammy Smodics. They've got enough players already there that could do a job at that level that I do see them coming straight back up again and actually then maybe having that chance to actually stick.
I agree entirely. I think for me, they're the favourites. So I'm backing on them to go down now. I think they're the favourites to win the championship next season. That 60, 70 million they get from, not Rory, Liam, will obviously be helpful, but I don't think they need to spend any of it. I think they could literally bank that. And with the team that they've got, like you've mentioned Smodics, he was the top goal scorer from the previous championship season. All of the signings that they've made are pretty much top of the tree championship level signings. So yes, you could probably argue to say it might have been a bad window, but I think they've planned well for relegation. And I can't see how they don't win the league because all of their signings were top of the tree championship signings. So I don't think they even need to dip into that 60, 70 million. They can bank that in preparation to go back up again and then spend that on some proper Premier League quality.
Well, yeah. Good point. The only thing I will say is that they've got quite a few loans in, haven't they? I'd like them to. I like a team that's if you're really setting yourself up for the future to not have too many loan players, have the destiny in your control.
I think the only one's really Calvin Phillips. I think the majority of them they have signed. So
Amari, Ben Godfrey.
Ben, yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't even count Ben Godfrey because the players that they've replaced were ones that got them out of the championship anyway. So they've still got things like Tuan Zabi, they've still got Sam Morsey, so they still have that level behind those loan signings. I think the main ones are like your Amari Hutchinsons, Sammy Smodics, all of those levels of signings. Jack Clark, they'll just go and demolish the championship again, I think.
Yeah, if they keep them all, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And again, we have to remember how far Ipswich have come in a short space of time. Again, when we talk about players, we have to look at the managerial merry-go-round as a possible derailment. And no doubt we'll come on to some teams later that could be looking for a new manager.
That's an interesting one, though. Do you think he's done enough for? Obviously, I think his stock has probably fallen throughout the year from when Ipswich came up. But do you think a Premier League team would be willing to risk taking him? Because he's obviously done a great job. I'm not knocking him, but it's to me it'd be whether those signings are his decisions or not, whether he feels they're the signings that he wants. Because I think they could have done a bit better with the signings, if I'm being honest. But it'd be interesting to see if a Premier League club would be willing to take him.
So if you think about the food chain, and if I look down the list, just the list of teams playing this weekend that could, not will, but could lose a manager. If West Ham don't get it right, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing in the world to see Graham Potter leave. I know he's only just got there, but I can see that happening. I can see obviously Wolves needing a new manager. I can see Bournemouth needing a new manager, or Brentford for different reasons.
Yep, see it pinched, yeah.
Same with Fulham. I can see Fulham and I can see Manchester United. I can see all of those teams potentially needing a new manager for one reason or another. And I think he would be on the list of 80% of those teams.
Yeah, I think he would, because obviously you look at the company getting relegated by Burnley and he's gone to Bayern, so it's definitely doesn't put teams off, does it? I actually thought Ipswich would transition just a little bit better than they have now. I understand it is still such a huge gulf, but they have spent some cash, I think, in the wrong places. But I just thought the transition a little bit better. Like for me, with with the play, with the reputation of the manager and having someone like Delap up front, they just haven't scored enough goals. I actually thought they would score goals the way that they played.
Yeah, like I say, I think, and it was interesting. Excuse me, sort of listening to Russell Martin on Monday night. If you haven't listened to it, I know that obviously he's not necessarily favourite of the month, but obviously he came up with Southampton. If you haven't, I recommend everybody go and listen to it, because one of the questions he was asked was, what would you do differently? And it was just a really interesting answer. And actually, you would have thought he might have said maybe not play out from the back as much, but actually what he said was essentially foul the players earlier. Essentially was what he was kind of getting to, is that just get to them quicker and foul them quicker. And it's like, I just thought that was a really interesting mindset of all of the things that, and I think maybe Ipswich have come up a little bit naive in that sense as well, and sort of they let other teams play too much, don't they? Rather than what they do, they actually, just concede too many goals.
Yeah, and I think what you said about finding players quicker as well. I'm talking about recruitment. I think when you look at, obviously, the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League is massive, and is going to continue to grow. So let's say Wolves stay up, they'll reinvest and they'll have another season on top of the 3 promoted teams. I think it's just about recruitment. So the teams that have come up have spent some money, but when you look at the players that they've signed, I don't think with the exception of Delap, there's not one player where you can pinpoint and go, what a successful transfer that's been. It has been very much a case of hit and miss transfers. I think they just need to recruit better. I think if you're coming up from the Championship, the only way you are staying up is if your recruitment is bang on, and it has to be bang on. It can't even be 50, 60%. It has to be pretty much 90%.
Yeah, it's interesting stat. You think goals would influence your league position, but if I look at Tottenham are the second highest goal scorers in the league on 55 goals, and obviously they're 14th. But you look at Crystal Palace, who've only scored 36 goals, but they're sort of 6 points, 5 points better off than Spurs. It's about what you do with the goals, isn't it? Like you say, actually Ipswich are on 26 goals, aren't a million miles away from West Ham, who've only scored 32. It's just they've conceded 58, and that is a massive problem. You can't outscore. It's almost 2-1, isn't it? Well, in fact, it's more than 2-1, and that's your problem.
Yeah, and especially when we talk about the level of striker and how highly we rate Delap, is they should be scoring a few more, shouldn't they, really? When you've got a star forward like that in the league, and let's be honest, he is. He looks that good, and you can't be scoring that many goals. You need to score more.
We move on to the Etihad. You've mentioned it already. Manchester City host Brighton, 3:00 still on Saturday. This is one of those games that stylistically is always going to be attractive. It's going to be an interesting game. But you've alluded to the fact that you don't see this as being a home win.
I can see Man City winning, but I wouldn't stick any money on them to win, especially the form that Brighton are in. I know they got a last-minute penalty. Thank you very much, by the way, Brighton.
Saved your bacon there.
Yeah, thank you. Banked a nice bit of cash on that. But yeah, I mean, I know it was a last-minute penalty, but Brighton are playing really well. Man City is so hit and miss. Like I think there's something like 1-2. I think it's horrendous odds. I think if you're going to have a bet, I'll be back in Brighton. I mean, I can absolutely see goals in this. Both teams score goals, so I can see goals. But I wouldn't be back in Man City if you gave me 50 quid.
Well, I've got them at 4-6. But even that for a home game is actually quite long. But you wouldn't touch it because, like you say, this could be any of the three. This could be a dull 0-0 or a high scoring 3-3. I remember the game reverse fixture at Brighton where they made that comeback to win the game. This is actually the sort of fixture that Brighton actually enjoy and do well in.
Well, Man City as well of late have been pushing high up the pitch, haven't they? Now they've got Kusanov in the team. Kusanov, they push quite high up and leave a lot of space in behind, which absolutely will suit Brighton and their wingers. They'll run into that space quite gladly, and I can see this being a very good game to watch, but I don't think it's going to be controlled by Man City at all.
Oh, and again, I know that people are starting to really kind of grasp onto this, but the comeback that Brighton have made after that 7-0 Tonkin against Nottingham Forest, they've gone on to beat Chelsea 3-0, Southampton 4-0, Bournemouth 2-1, and Fulham 2-1. They've put themselves right back in the mix. They're currently on 46 points, only 1 point behind Manchester City in fifth. If they win, obviously, of course, they go above them. And we're now talking about Brighton as being a realistic challenger to Champions League football. And if you think about going back to, because it was the early kick-off on that Saturday, the 1st of February, if you'd have said to anybody that Brighton are going to come back from that win 4 and about to be back in the, you would have been laughed out of the room because they got absolutely annihilated. What a comeback it's been by them.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. And I think it does tie back into some of the injured players in the January transfer. We mentioned recruitment, signed a couple of good players. Again, I forget the name of the lad who they brought in, but he's from the MLS. He looks unbelievable when he's played. Looks a very good signing. Can you imagine if Forest and Brighton make the top four? Like, it would be so refreshing, won't it? Just to not have the same old status quo. But they're going ever so well. I do just feel that they're still a bit too shaky at the back for me. You know, I think they've got a fair few injuries. They're just a little bit shaky at the back for me to make the top five. Although, if anyone's going to, I think out of the chasing pack, it will be them because I can see Newcastle dropping off now.
Do you know what? I'm going to say that I think the last two results for me actually give them some credibility. I think to beat Fulham and Bournemouth, who are two
Great wins.
very well organised, by the way, both of them in and around the mix as well, by the way. If you take those 6 points off of Brighton and put them either of two teams, those two teams are right bang in the mix. But I think those two victories actually tell me that Brighton are set. They're okay. They're in a good spot. As long as they can keep, no more injuries. And that's the same for everybody, of course. We've already touched on Newcastle again. They're and Liverpool, of course, now with a couple of injuries. Actually, Brighton are right bang in this. And if they can get through this fixture, the next run of fixtures can only be easy to Manchester City away, and they go on a run. That'll be 5 wins on the bounce, and they're slap bang in the mix, aren't they? They've got Villa midweek. Win those two games, they'd end up playing Leicester, and all of a sudden it really opens up for them.
That's it. Just having that little bit consistent. If you can carry on that for 2 or 3 games, like you said, you are in the midst because the other teams around them are dropping points, and I include Chelsea and Arsenal. Like I said, I'm not being funny with Arsenal. I know they're 9 points, but you'd be back in Brighton over Arsenal at the minute, wouldn't you? Like I'm thinking, saying Forest are safe. Arsenal are 4 points ahead of them, but they're dropping points consistently. So yeah, a couple of wins for Brighton. Keep this level of consistency up, and they're well in with a shout.
They really are, and I think this summer, obviously they've got some but like they haven't got that kind of superstar player that you think is going to get pinched. Maybe João Pedro, but Matoma, they've got some, but actually it just feels a bit different. They're buying players that won't get. I don't see there being the usual bust to Chelsea, for example, this summer from Brighton.
I don't know. I think there's a few that they'll be fighting clubs off for. I think Carlos Baleba looks the next one, doesn't he? From the line of players that they've got, he does look a very good player, and he's young as well. I think he's something like 20, so there's a lot of potential there. But I think his age is going to play into their hands there. I think they'll be able to keep him for another couple of years and let him develop. Mitoma is obviously one from Saudi, where it was a huge bid, wasn't there? And Minter on the wing, he does look a very good player as well. But again, his age will probably play into their hands. I mean, I agree with you. There's not that standout star, but there's going to be a lot of players circling around them. I think they will hold on to them though because of the age of the players. They'll probably keep hold of them.
And let's not forget that if they do make Champions League, those players aren't going anywhere.
Yep, absolutely, they won't go anywhere.
So that and it's such fine margins, isn't it? If you think about a team like Nottingham Forest and Brighton, you talk about Morgan Gibbs-White, you talk about Murillo Milinkovic, the goalkeeper. So if they're not making Champions League, they could all go. But they make Champions League, they're going to get new players in as well. Same with Brighton, right? They're both those clubs will make sure they go again if they're in Champions League football.
Do you know what I find funny about Brighton? We've just reeled off a load of their young players with star potential. I think the one player that's come back into it from the beginning of the season is Danny Welbeck. I think he's the one that's made the difference, hasn't it? Because their form, it's no coincidence that they were playing really well. He got injured and then it dropped off. And as good as João Pedro is, I think Danny Welbeck just links the whole of that team up so much better. I don't think there's any coincidence that, how old is he now? 37? He's got to be something around that, hasn't he? Like that he's come in and he's made the difference. So yes, they've got a lot of good players, but at the minute I'd be saying he's their key player.
If you went back in time and you was Manchester United, if you think about the money that Manchester United have spent on centre forward since Danny Welbeck left, and you said, don't worry about it, just keep him. I wonder whether they would, because, like I say, even now at this age, he seems to be performing better at the level than between them, they were over 100 million quid holding in Xerxes, weren't they? So, and Danny Welbeck was there.
Yeah. Well, we've spoken about United and said what players has gone there and actually succeeded in a long time. And there's probably 2 in Bruno Fernandes and Zlatan. He's the only forward that I could think of. The rest of them, none of them have come up to the levels of what Danny Welbeck was able to do.
It's funny, isn't it? It's funny. We moved to St Mary's, where Southampton host Wolves in tentatively calling still a relegation 6-pointer. I do think, as we probably both do, that Wolves are safe. But if they win this game, they are, I'm pretty sure, 100% safe in reality.
It's a 6-pointer for Ipswich, isn't it? Because if Wolves win, they're down. Unless Ipswich go and win as well. But the gap will just grow too far for Ipswich to catch. So it's a massive game for Ipswich. Probably more so than, obviously more than the Southampton. Southampton gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to be one of those games that kind of just becomes, one of the games that happen with nobody really sort of paying, unless you're one of the, like say, of the three teams, Ipswich being the third, is probably not going to get a lot of attention based on all the other stuff that's going on this weekend. But this is a sort of game where Wolves just have to get the job done, don't they? They can't afford to take their eye off the ball. They can't afford to go there thinking we're only playing Southampton. We're going to get the win. They have to go because let's not forget that Southampton did go 1-0 up at Anfield just last weekend.
I mean, I'm not saying this is what they'll be doing, but I think a point will be good enough for them, to be honest, because their goal difference is so much better than Ipswich, and you've got to say Leicester because they're on the same points, but their goal difference is so much better that even 2 wins will still mean that they're going to stay in the bottom 3. So I think a point will probably be enough for Wolves. They'll absolutely be targeting 3, but I thought there was a decent performance against Everton as well. I thought they'd really struggled with Cunha, but there still seemed to be quite a lot of flair going forwards, which leads me to say I think Wolves are banker of the week here. I think they'll demolish Southampton. I think they've got too much attacking flair going forward, even without Cunha, and the midfield and defence is starting to look solid again.
I thought you might have the same banker as me this weekend, so you've got a different one, which is good. Unfortunately in this game, I don't think there's a huge amount more we really need or want to say on it, really. I think that we both, and I've actually put Wolves in some way, shape or form in my £5 challenge. I've gone a little bit different this week because I'm getting bored of one team stitching me up, so I've gone a little bit different, but I do see Wolves winning this game. The game that actually on Saturday, which is the one that luckily is on telly, I'm really, really intrigued by is the 5:30 kickoff at the Vitality. Bournemouth host Brentford. A clash of styles, a clash of up-and-coming managers, a clash of exciting group of players. And I think this could be a really, really interesting Saturday night ding-dong.
Yeah, it absolutely could. I mean, Bournemouth's form has just dropped off a bit, hasn't it? Which is unfortunate for them because they were fifth at one point, I think, weren't they? But it has dropped off, but it does tie back into injuries and suspensions. But yeah, very interesting game for me. I thought Brentford played really, really well the other night. They were very, very unfortunate not to score. I thought for a long period of time they actually battered. It was Villa, wasn't it? They actually battered them, and they were very unfortunate. So this has got a really good feel about it to me, and I think there should be some goals.
Well, and going back to Bournemouth's form, it was one of the most peculiar 2-2 draws I think I've ever seen, in the sense that Bournemouth absolutely battered Tottenham. Then they scored from a cross, then nothing. Bournemouth should have another couple of goals, and then relatively sort of off against someone I play break that they get a penalty. Again, a very peculiar effort for some in terms of finishing the penalty, and then it ends up 2-2. And I think it underdid what Bournemouth deserved from that game. So yes, the form doesn't look great, but they are still outplaying teams and just not quite getting over the line at the moment. That's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether when they were in that unbelievable run of form, some of the teams that they had beat was top draw, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas then you look at the teams that they've lost to, you think you shouldn't be losing them games. If you'd just flicked on a few wins onto the games that you've lost, you'd be in an unbelievable position. So I don't know whether it is they're just getting themselves up for the bigger teams more than they are the smaller teams. But I mean, if they can turn that around, they would be further up the league. But I mean, games like this, they should be. If you look on paper, they should be beating Brentford, especially at home. So if they can go and do that, they'll be back in the running for a European place, won't they?
And again, I think I'm probably going to talk about this every week until the end of the season, but that could be the difference between keeping the manager and not keeping the manager. Because again, as I keep saying, I know for sure that there are clubs circling that man. If it was interesting even during the Real Madrid game last night, the commentary team were talking about how if Real Madrid don't win the Champions League, Ancelotti is in trouble because they're not guaranteed to win the league either. It looks like they probably won't win the league. And again, they picked up a whole bunch more injuries yesterday. So actually, Iriola's even being talked about in that kind of circle. And everybody around Europe has been really impressed with the press and how they play. And even I read something Vicario this week about how he's saying that the Bournemouth press is the best he's ever seen, and everybody wants that. So Bournemouth need European football to have any chance of keeping him.
They do, and on the Real Madrid front, can you imagine if they do get rid of Ancelotti after of what he's done over the years? I know it'll be one season of failure, if you like, but madness.
It's football.
Madness.
Yep, it's football. It is football. But again,
we'll have him there, won't we? He can come on, special guest when he's lying on the beach.
I think he might have slightly bigger pressing media after him, but
drop him a WhatsApp.
You probably will. You know what you do. Give it a go.
I DM him on Twitter, see if he'll answer.
Yeah, see how you get on. But again, talking about the kind of the future for both these teams, for me, I think Bournemouth have got a much better chance of holding on to their key players. For me, next season, Brentford are going to have to replace the world's youngest man, Brian Mbeumo, and probably Jan Visser as well. I see both of them ended up somewhere else, just because that's the Brentford model and the Brentford way.
Especially Visser, I think he's got 1 year left on his deal, so he either extends or he'll be off, won't he? Which I think they probably managed to keep hold of Mbeumo, because I think the fee that is going to be spoken about for him, I can't see anyone plumping for him.
Trust me.
I reckon, I just can't see it. I just think he's, for a 36-year-old man, they're going to want 70, 80 million, and he is good, but is he that good? Is he that level of good? Like, I think there's a few others I'd probably try and pinch ahead of him.
Listen, I'm telling you now, if you look at Sunday's teams playing, Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs, Man U all have him. Newcastle have him. West Ham have him. Maybe
Who's
even
going to spend that though? Man U can't afford a tin of soup for the staff at the minute, so he ain't going there.
Yeah, listen, don't what's the phrase? Don't believe the hype. Public enemy. Don't believe the hype. Manchester United have to go again. They have to find a way of making that work. They have to. They have to go and find some players. And like I say, for me, absolutely, Brian Mbeumo becomes a
pensioner.
A 26-year-old pensioner as he'll be next season. Still, the amount of times I genuinely just randomly for a day and it hit me. I'm like, how old is he? Like, it still genuinely bothers me. I'm frantically Googling players' ages to find out who's younger than him. Every year, or older than him. It does bother me. But looking forward to Saturday night. And of course, Sunday we've got some really interesting football with a cup final in between. But we start at the Emirates, which a couple of weeks ago, this game would have been absolutely massive. But is it just me? But this feels a little bit like, meh. And we've got Arsenal hosting Chelsea in the 1:30 kickoff.
I think it does feel a bit meh, because both teams aren't probably where they expected them to be. But I think it's massive, obviously, for the running for the Champions League places, because I think Forest are more secure of their Champions League place than Arsenal for me at the minute. I know there's 4 points difference, but Arsenal, I just can't see how they score goals. And I know they scored 7 the other week, and I just can't see. The positivity seems to be draining out of the club. Arteta's getting such bad press from the fans. I mean, that's why the game feels a bit meh to me, because it would have been a bit of a blockbuster. But now, I said Chelsea as well. The feeling, when Palmer was flying, everyone was, I can't wait to watch Chelsea. Cole Palmer's amazing. Who had Chelsea got at the minute that makes you get up off your feet? I thought, even though they dominated against Leicester, it wasn't a scintillating performance.
I think that's a real problem throughout football at the moment, mate, is with the way that everyone's gone towards a style rather than, kind of flair, is that actually football's getting a little bit dull. Like, we're in danger of people turning off from a spectacle, because actually, you look at Manchester City, they're not exciting anymore, are they? You look at Chelsea, it's very system. In fact, Maresca came out, didn't he, after the game and said, I think it was Caicedo who passed back, and the reporter asked him, why, the crowd were urging him to go forward, and he passed back to the goalkeeper. He said, because if he didn't pass back to the goalkeeper, I would have dropped him. And you're thinking,
And going off a side note, I think that's why I warmed to PSG the other night so much, because every time they got the ball, they were forward thinking. They were allowed. It wasn't. Yes, there was tactics and style of play to it, but a lot of it was just flair. Like, they'd give the ball to Kvaratskhelia, there you go, and he would just literally go, do you know what, I'm going to run past 4 of you. Like, Dembele would do the same. They do a Cruyff turn. Like, That's why I warmed to them, because I thought this is a bit of a throwback to our teams, like the old United team used to play. There was no, this is the way we play. You get the ball, you pass it to the six, you go back into the fullback. Like, there wasn't any of that really. Like, there was a level of that, but it was almost on the player. So go on, off you go. You're good enough. And we don't see that in the Premier League anymore.
I think the only mistake that PSG made for me was they were shooting from too far out, too regular, like just on the edge of the box, too regular. Which is obviously a strategy because they did it in both games. But for me, I just wanted it almost a little bit closer, just to give yourself that there's a very clear stat of the closer you get to, obviously it's going to sound stupid, but the closer you get to the goal, the more likely you are to score. And the closer you are to the middle of the goal, the more likely you are to score. So actually to be taking a shot sort of between the penalty spot and the 6-yard box is kind of like the holy grail.
Unless you're Darwin Núñez.
But Curtis Jones missed as well, by the way, everybody. But I just felt that they were a little bit too far from the goal. But we come back to Arsenal, and actually, you look at the team they put out last night with Kieran Tierney playing on the left and Raheem Sterling playing on the right. It does just show actually that they haven't really got much underneath that first 11. There is some ways they need to have like an addition in the first team, but they also need an upgrade of the squad, don't they?
Absolutely, and we mentioned it before. Without the 2 youth products coming through, where would they be? Like, they would be so threadbare, wouldn't they? From a team that I think we both tipped them to win the league this season. Like, did you not?
I think so.
I think I did again. I think when you look at the team that they had, to how now glaringly obvious it's sort of how short it is. They're very fortunate those 2 young lads have come through and performed to the levels that they have, because without them, to be honest, they've been their standout players for a good few months. Without them, they'd be a pretty average team.
Yeah, it's again, you talk about both Arsenal and Manchester City's drop. I mean, Liverpool have made it feel so comfortable that it does mean that I think it must be a very difficult time to be an Arsenal Manchester City fan, because you thought if I just beat the other one of them, nobody really had Liverpool winning the league this year based on Jurgen Klopp leaving as well. Actually, what Liverpool have done is make it look so easy so early that actually, if I'm an Arsenal massive fan, I must be scratching my going, what have we got to do?
I think that's where I was with thinking that they win the league this year, because on paper they look to be the most consistent. And you thought, well, it's sort of coming. They're just building up every single year, and they're going to get there eventually. And then this is just a huge drop off. But I mean, we both said at the beginning they needed a forward, and they haven't addressed that problem. And I think it's come back to bite them. Obviously, come back to bite them, but more so than they ever thought.
Yeah, the other problem that was. Or the solution that was kind of hiding the problem was obviously they were scoring a lot of goals from corners and free kicks, and that's dried up. And actually, at the time, I remember seeing stats of like sort of 70% of Arsenal's goals came from corners or free kicks, and when they're going in, it glosses over the lack of open play goals. But now teams have worked that out a bit better, and they've stopped scoring from corners and free kicks. Where other than PSV, where are the goals coming from? They do look toothless in the Premier League.
I mean, I know Marino scored a couple against Leicester, didn't he? But he's been playing up front for them, and you can just tell he's not a forward. He doesn't know where to be. Like, he does an okay job for a standing, but he's not a forward. And the fact that Arsenal haven't addressed this forward problem for 2-3 seasons now, and they've had players like Jesus, who's a false 9, they haven't had a centre forward that you can hang your hat on, like a Haaland, and forget the level of goals that Haaland scores, just the type of player he is as well. They need to go out and buy a genuine forward, a 9 who's going to hold the ball up, bring others into play, bash people around when you're not able to pass the ball nicely down the flank, a bit of route one here and there. They haven't got that, and they haven't even been linked. Like, it was a tenuous link to Ollie Watkins. They put that bid in to appease the fans. That wasn't a serious bid. Like, there haven't been any links where you've gone, actually, I can see what you're doing there. There have been links where you've gone, you've done that to appease the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've scored only 1 goal since the Leicester game, when it looked like they'd found a solution to their problem, but they definitely have not. It leads us on to across London, the same time, 1:30 kick-off at Craven Cottage, Fulham host Spurs. I think the best way we can summarise this is that Fulham are favourites, and quite rightly so.
Yeah, I think they'd have to be favourites at home. Yeah, I could agree with you on that. I do think Spurs just do score goals, though, and sooner or later they are going to go bang, bang, bang against somebody. So Fulham, are very hit and miss. You don't know what you get with Fulham, but at home, yes, I agree. I think you'd have to say they're favourites.
But the bookies agree with me. They're even. Spurs are only 3-1, and quite rightly so as well. I think Fulham are just further down their evolution. I think Spurs picked up another injury, and Danso's now out for probably the season. He's done his hamstring. You look at Kulusevski being out. For me, they're just so open. The fullbacks are out of form. They've got a midweek game, so they've got to try. If they win that, they've got to try and get Van de Ven and Romero through the rest of the season. Otherwise, they're in big trouble. For me, Spurs are lacking so many solutions to problems that other teams just seem to keep finding.
Yeah, they have got a few back there, haven't they, where they're able to hopefully rotate a little bit. I know Sedan's injured, but I thing that you always have with Spurs is they do score goals. And like I said, if you can get Romero and Van de Ven through, get them a bit of match fitness and get them being resilient again, they will tighten up at the back. So I always think that, when you've got players in your team like Spurs have that can score goals, you always have a chance.
Yeah, like I say, I think that we again, when we talk about managers, for me, this is a very, very interesting 2 weeks for Postecoglou. It would not surprise me in the slightest if they lost to Fulham. They then go and play Chelsea and they don't win at Chelsea. Then there's an international break, and it wouldn't surprise me if at that point, if they haven't beaten Fulham and Chelsea, there's an international break. That's when you might see a decision made.
Is it the Europa or the Conference? When's the Europa? When's that? Tonight. I think that's the trigger for me. If they get beat there, because the league's then irrelevant, isn't it, really? I think that's possibly, I don't know whether they'll do it there and then, but like I said, the international break would be a good time to do it, a bit of time to try and find the manager. They should be sounding them out now, to be honest, but I think that's the trigger. If they get beat tonight, go out, that will possibly be the end of days.
Yes, we revert back to the Bournemouth conversation as conversations that may or may not have already happened, and let's see if they can work something out there. Again, tripling someone's wages does tend to prick the ears up, but again, it is really important that Bournemouth get to European football for me. I think that would be. But again, of course, if Spurs did win the Europa League, of course, they then play Champions League football. And of course, that could then open up a whole different can of solutions to the problem that Spurs have, including the potential of a foreign investor coming in to take out Daniel Levy's ENIC.
So you mentioned the Bournemouth manager there. Do you think, is there anyone else on their list of managers? Do you reckon who would be a good fit?
He's number one, but he is number one of most teams that might be looking to change a manager.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. He's going to be number one for a few. So what's the contingency plan? Because we mentioned McKenna before as well. I think he'd be possibly a nice fit there.
Well, he has links to both Spurs and Manchester United. McKenna, obviously working in both of their academies. I think everything I've heard is that Spurs really, really want Postecoglou to work. They really, really want him to work. But now also there's some decisions he's making that start to irritate people. So last week, leaving Romero and Van de Ven out, they wanted to see Archie Gray play in the 6, but he was on the bench. So they're just starting to for the first time, there's noise coming out of Spurs that says that they're getting the ump with him. So whereas all season it's been absolutely 100% positivity coming out, it's starting to change. And Iriola is 100% top of the list. And conversations have at least happened in some way, shape or form as to can they get him over the line. Final game of that, we will touch on the Carabao Cup real quickly, but final game of the Premier League weekend is 7:00 Sunday at the King Power Stadium. Leicester host Manchester United. This is my banker of the week, Fran.
I was thinking very, very similar, but I thought I'd mix it up now. It's been about 4 weeks in a row where I've backed against Leicester as the bank of the week because it always comes in, let's be honest. But no, I've gone for Wolves just because I've a little bit better odds is the only reason why.
Have you got anything you can give me that makes you think that Leicester could do anything? I mean, obviously Manchester United are on the beach. Obviously,
I have something. I don't think it will make any difference, if I'm being honest, but I have something. Is Leicester have to take positivity out of the FA Cup performance against Man United. It might have been the last time Leicester scored in about 7 games. For the majority of the game, Leicester dominated the game. It was only 2 late goals and Garnacho coming on when Man United got back into the game. They have to take positivity from that because they have to start winning games, let alone picking up a point. They have to win games now to try and stay in the league. If Wolves beat Southampton, Leicester will still be 9 points behind if they lose. So they have to win games. That's the only thing I can say about it, to say how Leicester are going to go about it, because I still think they'll lose. I think it'll be comfortable. I don't think they'll score. But they have to look at that FA Cup game with some confidence, and will take confidence from it, because, I mean, where else are they taking confidence from at the minute?
The other thing that if I was in the Leicester change room, I would be talking about free hit. We're not expected to win. We're expected to go down, play with freedom, play with joy. You know, if we're going to go down, let's at least go down swinging. If we're going to go down, let's at least go down fighting. And do you know what? You know, if I was the manager, I'd be saying, you know, I'm going to stay next season. We're going to put this right. Let's get together. Let's start now. You know, next season's preparation start now.
This is how low Leicester are at the minute, though. I thought there was positivity there in the defeat to Chelsea. It was 1-0. I expected it to be 4 or 5. There was a change of shape. So for once, you know, we've not played 4-3-3. We've gone with a 3-5-2. I think that was positive. For how low it's gone, though, is Leicester still didn't look like scoring, but our fans came away with a positive attitude because defensively they looked better. That's all you can take from it at the minute. It's that bad. You know, Leicester haven't scored, I mean, in 7 or 8 games. Like, it's horrendous. So I think that's the only thing they can do, is try and take these little bits of positivity and move it into the next game, because, I mean, if you look on the face of it, it is dreadful.
Well, I would be in there talking about next season's preparations now, and looking at shapes and systems and all that good stuff, and finding out who's on board and who's not on board. But again, it should be a very entertaining game to finish off the game week. Now, of course, there is a cup final. I think it's fair to say completely blighted by suspensions and injuries. Trent Arnold, Canate look like they're both out now for Liverpool. Obviously, Anthony Gordon and others are out for Newcastle. So we're going to be seeing a bit of a watered down affair in my eyes. I always like to see kind of the best players playing in the cup final, but Newcastle not quite the same team they were a couple of weeks ago. Any chance of them beating Liverpool, or is this just going to be? I mean, obviously Liverpool come off the back of a bit of heartbreak, a little bit of a tough decision. Can you give Newcastle any chance of winning?
I think they've got a chance of winning, because when you've got the best forward in the league, I'm going to call him that. I think, or probably was a couple of weeks ago. You've always got a chance because they can score goals, and they've already seen what he's done to Van Dijk this season. He ruined him a few months ago. So I think there's always a chance. I just feel now that Liverpool will be entirely focused on this game because the league's wrapped up, obviously, out of the Champions League. So they'll be going, have to win a trophy, have to, because the season's going to unravel before their eyes. So I think there'll just be too much focus on this. If they got through, I'd have probably given Newcastle a bit more chance, to be honest. But no, I think with the suspensions and the injuries and Liverpool's focus, I can't see how Liverpool lose the game.
By the way, I love the fact that we just said that the season's going to unravel by still having the Premier League wrapped up probably with 6 games early.
Yeah, from where it was there, a few weeks ago, people were saying this historical quadruple and all of that. Like, it has just sort of unravelled before them.
I completely understand your point. It just feels a bit of a, at the start of the season, they probably would have taken that. But you're right, there was talk not long ago about a quadruple, wasn't there?
Yeah, at the start of the season, if you just said you're going to win the Premier League and that's it, they'd have snapped your hands off for it, especially after Jurgen Klopp leaving, Snot coming in. Yeah, but I mean, from where they were a few weeks ago, you were looking at and you were going, I don't see where they lose. Like, they were top of the Champions League, they were in all the cups. They had a great draw against teams in the FA Cup. Like, you just couldn't see where that loss was coming from. And then all of a sudden, bang, bang, just got one to focus on, really, haven't they?
Snot. That's gonna take me some time to get over. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely right. So let's get back right the way back to the beginning. Let's see what we got this week. Let's see what we got that's the same. Let's see what we think we can do. Can we better last week's average attempt? So we start at Goodison Park. Everton host West Ham. You have the score as
1-1.
Snap. Exactly what I have. And I think that would be probably not a bad result for either as well, to be honest with you. We move to Portman Road. Ipswich host Nottingham Forest. You have the score as
Ipswich 0, Forest 2.
I thought it was going to have the same. Then again, I've got 1-2. One of the Delaps is scoring, I'm sure of it. We move on. This is going rather smoothly so far. It's the Etihad Stadium. Manchester City host Brighton. Still 3 o'clock on Saturday. The score will be
2-2.
Slap. And I can show you my writing, my workings out over here as well. So this is not me just snapping just because I'm trying to be fun. We moved to St Mary's, where Southampton host Wolves. 3 o'clock still. Score will be
Southampton 0, Wolves 1.
0-2. 0-2. I thought we might be on for something there as well. We moved to Vitality Stadium. 5:30 kick-off. Bournemouth host Brentford. The score will be
Bournemouth 2, Brentford 1.
snap. You know that none of these are going to happen. There's just far too much coincidence. None of these are going to. We've jinxed it. Arsenal at the Emirates host Chelsea. 1:30 kick-off on Sunday. The score will be
1-1.
No way. Snap. I reckon we might have the next two the same as well, by the way.
I think we might have.
That would be weird. Fulham at Craven Cottage host Spurs. 1:30 kick-off, not on the telly. The score will be?
I think this one's different. I've got 2-2.
Okay, I've got 2-1.
Yeah.
Fulham win.
I thought you would have that.
2-1 Fulham.
I think we've got this one. I think this is nailed on.
Let's see. Leicester at King Power host Manchester United. 7 o'clock on Sunday night. The score will be?
Leicester 0, Man U 2.
Yes. Holy moly, there's a lot there that's the same. That's right, and I even said holy moly as well. Let's
5 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 5 out of 8 we've got.
It's got to be worth a quid, isn't it? On correct scores. Newcastle versus Liverpool in a Carabao Cup final, obviously held at Wembley. The score will be, in your eyes?
Newcastle 0, Liverpool 2.
I've gone the same different way. I've gone 1-3. Newcastle 1, Liverpool 3. To be fair, I don't actually know who's the home team in terms of, so forgive me if I've got that the wrong way around. I just wrote it down just to have a look. Your banker of the week was Wolves. Are you sticking with Wolves?
Yeah, I will stick with Wolves.
My banker of the week is Manchester United, which actually gives you a better odds than you might think as the two combined, because they're both around evens. And for your £5 challenge, where have you gone this week, young man?
I have gone relatively straightforward, to be honest. I've gone Forest, Wolves and Man U, and that £5 pays £38.24.
Not bad, not bad. I've gone a little bit skewed with this week because I've just had enough of one team letting me down. So I've gone Everton, West Ham under 2.5 goals. I've gone Wolves and Manchester United to win to 0. And that returns £98.44 from a fiver. Ooh. Which I thought was not a bad little go, to be fair.
Yeah.
So
I can see. Well, we both predict this. Well, they're the games we've absolutely nailed on. So if we both agree, yeah, 98 quid.
Frank, as always, loved that hour. Really enjoyed myself. Hopefully other people did too. Where can people find us? Where can they reach out and get in touch?
So on social media, we're on X, Facebook and TikTok. If you search for The Atmosphere is Electric, you'll be able to find us. Send us a DM. We've put a load of stuff out there. We've got stuff out there about Cheltenham as well, if you want to have a look at that. We've also got, if you want to listen to the episodes, we're on Spotify and we're on Apple Podcasts and YouTube.
Wonderful. As always, Fran, thank you so much for your time. Have you got any questions? Sorry, normally you throw a last minute question. Have you got a question this week?
I haven't got any. I will probably, I haven't had time to get one. I mean, I could probably get you one if you wanted one.
No. I was just thinking that sometimes you throw a question at me, so that's no problem at all. Maybe next week when there's obviously an international break, maybe we can do a week of questions. We can make it more of a question of sport. But Fran, really enjoyed that, buddy. Thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you next week.